Hey guys, this video probably deserves to go on our odd stuff in Japan playlist. There's been a story doing the rounds in the mainstream media in Japan last few days about rent-a-cars. So there's some short-term car rental type businesses in Japan. So one of them in particular, there's a company called Times, and they have car parks, and they have a lot of car parks, and quite often outside train stations and sort of convenient places like that where you can park your car and go catch the train. And they've branched out into this short-term car rental, which is a bit of a popular thing in Japan, where you can rent a car for just a couple of hours. And it's very clever. The Times guys are very clever to do it because they have car parks everywhere, so it's really easy for them to set off one corner of their car park and keep a couple of cars there. And they have a system where people have a membership. They're members of this rental system, and they can just walk into the car park and jump in the car and drive away, and for a couple of hours, and then go to a meeting or something, so they can catch a train at the train station, go jump in the car, drive to their meeting, drive back, park the car, get back on the train, and off they go. So it's very clever, short-term car rental. However, the story is that recently they noticed that people were renting the car, or the cars, people were renting the cars, but quite often there was no mileage, no driving being done. So they'll know that particular car was rented 2 or 3 times and didn't go anywhere, never left the car park. Right? They know that from the speedometer, right, from the mileage, that it hasn't gone anywhere. And they noticed that was quite common. They were getting that quite a lot. So they surveyed their customers, and they found that customers were renting the car for an hour to have a sleep, or renting the car for an hour to have some lunch, or renting the car for an hour to do some work on their laptop or whatever, Basically just renting it as a space that they could use for an hour or two, So it's interesting, isn't it? That story in itself is interesting, but there's more depth to it there the more you think about it. There's a few things that sort of come to mind. One is, it's possible that this is happening more often because the internet cafes that were very popular are obviously less popular than they used to be, because now everybody has smartphones. So, 10 years ago, those internet cafes are extremely popular, and they still are. There's internet cafes everywhere where you go, and we've showed you videos. If you haven't seen it before, just search it on our channel. We've taken videos in a few different internet cafes, and you can go in and you can sit at a bench with a whole heap of other people, or you can have your own little cubicle. Have a look. If you haven't seen it, have a look at that video. It's quite interesting. They have showers in the building as well, so you can go and have a shower, and they often have a sofa. So you go in a little cubicle, you've got a sofa, and you've got a table with the computer on it, and the sofa's usually just big enough that you can sit on it or sleep on it if you want to. And people would go and spend 12 hours or 24 hours, or some people would stay in these internet cafes and put their clothes in a locker somewhere, and it works out pretty cheaply. So they're still popular, and we do still see them around, but obviously less popular than they used to be, because a lot of people, everybody's got a smartphone and iPad and all that sort of thing, which means they don't need the internet cafe so much. Probably the reason that they're still getting used probably is the same reason, is that people want their privacy. Is that there are a lot of people that still live at home with their parents, that are 25, 30, 35 years old, and still living at home with their parents, and a lot of people here live in very small environments with their families. So to go and have your own cubicle in a cafe is probably a bit of a privacy thing, a bit of peace and quiet and privacy. So that's why they're still popular. Oh, there goes the phone. The phone's ringing. Someone left a comment recently on that video about the policeman catching people for talking on the phone while they were driving. Left a comment about us getting caught doing it. No, we won't get caught doing it because we don't do it. We show you other people doing it, but we don't do it. It'll stop in a minute. So So yeah, a few interesting things. So they're renting the car to have that personal space for an hour or two, and not actually going anywhere. The internet cafes, it's sort of the same sort of thing. The other thing was though that here they are in their survey saying that they're renting the car for a nap or for a rest or for a sleep, and it's just sort of it's sort of a bit. The timing's interesting because we noticed recently. Once you start noticing something, you tend to notice it more. And what we were noticing is that so often when you ask people here how they are, they say they're tired. And we mentioned that in a previous video, but just recently, probably because the weather's got a bit hotter. And so people are a little bit more like that, you know. And quite often you'll ask someone, how are you? And oh, I'm tired, you know. And the next person, I'm tired. And we were somewhere the other day where there was a whole bunch of kids, and there was a bunch of teenagers, lots of teenagers from I don't know, well, kids of all ages, but in particular there's a big group of teenagers that would have been 14 to 17 or 18, and every one of them, how are you? I'm tired. How are you? I'm tired. All of them, you know, and it's sort of pathetic really, because, you know, 17 or 18-year-olds, you know, perpetually tired, or saying that they're perpetually tired, and the adults are the same. So, you know, you'd say to them, the mother, how are you? I'm tired. And see the kid, how are you? I'm tired. So everyone's walking around telling each other how tired they are. And we did actually make a video about this previously, and it's just, partly it's true, because some of them don't get enough sleep, and they're spending all their time studying and doing other things, but as we've mentioned before, a lot of that's just because there's too much faffing going on. There's too much time being wasted. So, you know, they're wasting a lot of time at school doing things that are pointless, and then they go to JUCO after school and sit around there. And most of the time at JUCO is wasted. We know someone that works at a JUCO, and they tell us all the time about the kids spend all their time in there on the smartphone and talking to each other and eating dinner and, you know, faffing around, and most of the time that they spend in the JUCO is wasted. You know, and at work's the same. You know, it's true that lots of Japanese people spend lots of time at work, but most of it's wasted. Not most of it, that's not fair, but often the time at work is wasted just doing pointless, ridiculous things that could be done much better. You know, we had a discussion about this with someone recently, and we're saying that, you know, in the West, there's a saying, in English we say, work smarter, not harder, you know? And there's nothing like that in Japanese. There's gambaru, you know, keep trying, try harder, is what they say. And spending lots and lots of time achieving very little is not considered to be unusual here, and nobody really stops to think about it. In fact, they don't really stop to think about what they're achieving. They just think about how much time they're spending doing it, you know. And we see this all the time, whether it's the kids, you know, doing 100 math problems, and they get the first 10 correct, and you think, well, okay, the next 90 is really a waste of time. So the kids do a lot of that, a lot of wasting time, and so do the adults, doing lots and lots of pointless stuff that if you question them, they'll tell you, yeah, no, it's pretty pointless. You know, that report that I spent a day doing every month, you know, my boss doesn't read it, you know. Does your boss read that report? No. How are you? I'm tired. Why? Oh, yesterday I spent, you know, 14 hours writing a report. Really? Yeah, every month I have to write a report of what I did for the month. Oh, really? Do you think your boss reads it? I don't think so. You know, I don't think so, because he has all these people under him. I don't think he's got time to read it, right? But they all do it. They all do it. That guy that works at the JUCO has to do it. They sit there at the JUCO teaching the kids, and at the end of the night, every teacher, the teachers usually at JUCO are just university students basically, but at the end of the night they have a book that they've got to get out, and they've got to write a report in their book every night about what they did during the night. And we know what they did during the night. They're talking to the kids in the JUCO, you know. There's nothing terribly, you know, cutting edge new about it. It's the same, they do the same thing every day, but all of them have to sit at the end of the night and write a report. And again, you know, each of them spends 20 minutes doing that, and there's 5 of them. Well, there's 100 minutes, you know. There's an hour and 40 minutes that was wasted by that particular little group, and we see this all the time. So sort of the point is that it's just silly. You know, this renting a car for an hour to have a sleep in the afternoon. Who has naps in the afternoon? If you're 2 years old, you might have naps in the afternoon, or if you're 80 years old, you might be having naps in the afternoon. But what working person needs to have a sleep for an hour in the afternoon? What's that about? I think quite often that sort of stuff, they're just hiding. You know, we've talked about that before at the convenience stores. You'll see a guy in a company car sitting at the convenience store watching TV. And then you drive away and you go somewhere else and you do something else. An hour and a half later you drive past and the same car's still sitting there. The guy's just lying back smoking a cigarette watching TV for an hour and a half or 2 hours. You know, it's like, well, what are you doing? And that's not a rare event. You know, pretty well any day you go outside a convenience store into the car park, anytime from about 11 o'clock in the morning till about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, or 8 o'clock at night. Anytime you will see at least someone doing that, at least one person, and sometimes in the afternoon, 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you might have 4 or 5 cars, company cars there with guys sitting back. And in fairness, some of them are just stopping for 30 minutes to have their lunch, but it's really common to see them sitting there and you come past an hour and a half later and the same car's still there. And they're hiding from someone. Often during the day they're just out, because again, they're not measured by productivity, they're measured by how much time they spend, right? So if they leave the office and go out and they're gone for 6 hours and then they come back, well, that's good, isn't it? They're being a good employee. And if they spent two hours of it at the convenience store, well, that doesn't, no one, you know, it doesn't matter, does it? No one really knows, do they? So if you see them in the afternoon, they're usually hiding from work. If you see them at night, quite often they're hiding from their families. And that's really common as well. They'll finish work and then they'll go sit in the convenience store and they'll smoke cigarettes and they'll watch TV and they'll eat something and then they'll go home at 9 o'clock. And we've had a guy tell us that he does that to avoid the chaos at home. So he knows that, you know, his wife and kids are busy, you know, having dinner and having their baths and all that chaos that goes on in young families at home. So to avoid that, he goes and sits in the convenience store car park and watches TV and smokes cigarettes and eats food until the kids have gone to sleep. I mean, there's a whole heap of depth to that, isn't there, as well? You know, here's a father avoiding spending time with his children, you know, by hiding in the convenience store car park. And again, not one of these examples that is a one-off. Not one of these examples is a one-off. All of these things are really common. And not like common like in the mainstream media where there's something happens 3 times in Japan and they tell you it's a trend, but something that we'll see every day. Actually, have a look at this. It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and have a look at these vehicles here on the left-hand side. All of them are legally parked, by the way. None of them should be on the right-hand side of that continuous white line. All of them are illegally parked, but this is really common too. Come past here in the afternoon, and all these trucks, and the truck drivers sit there and pull their curtains around and have a sleep. And again, some of them will be travelling long distance and they need a sleep, you know, legally by law. They need to have a rest. That's fair enough. Some will be having lunch, but you know, a lot of them at the cars as well. You know, a lot of these cars, company cars and trucks, and you know, really, really common. If we drive around the next couple of corners and go to the convenience store, you'll see exactly what we're talking about. So it's sort of interesting. This, I'm perpetually tired, and you know, I sleep every chance I get. The train's the other common example of the foot sticking out the window. The train is the other common example where, you know, everybody's so tired and they get on the train in the afternoon, and the kids too, and not 10 o'clock at night. I mean 10 o'clock at night as well, but not just 10 o'clock at night, but you know, 4:30 in the afternoon you travel back from the city on a train and the kids will be asleep, sitting on the seat asleep on their way home. And it's like, you know, why? You know, why are 17-year-old kids, you know, having sleeps in the afternoon every chance they get? You know? And the adults too, all the salary man, all the sitting there beside each other, leaning on each other, falling asleep. You know, and again, that is common. That is common. You'll see that in the mainstream media sometimes. You know, on the internet, don't you? You guys, most of you have seen that image of all the salarymen there all leaning on each other, falling asleep. And they do, they really do. And it's like, it's sort of like, it's a bit of a self-perpetuating bit of nonsense, really. It's sort of like, it's really deep in the culture, you know. Interesting, when you get a speech, if you go to a wedding or you go to at some event or a big meeting, or any time there's a gathering of people and someone makes a speech, most times they will start the speech by saying, "Honjitsu wa minasan honjitsu wa oisagashi naka," in the midst of being busy, right? So they start their speech, and it could be an informal speech or a formal speech, but they start the speech by saying, "In the midst of you being so busy, thank you for taking the time to come." Right? And they say that all the time, and they'll say that it'll be an adults group or a bunch of teenagers playing sport or martial arts group or anybody. You know, in the midst of being so busy, thank you for taking the time to come and do this. So it's this cultural thing. And I mean, so those of you who've been watching our videos for the last 10 years would have heard this come up lots of times. You know, why is it the new houses don't have a decent balcony on them? And why is it the new houses don't have an outside entertaining area? And the reason is the same thing, is this perpetually busy thing. And so sitting around on a balcony reading a book you don't see it. You don't see it. We actually did make a video about that once, and it showed you all the balconies on all the houses and the apartments and things. And they don't design them to be spent for people to spend lounging on, because there's this thing about lying around would be considered to be lazy, you know. And even when people go to barbecues or go to the park and places like that, they're always doing something. You know, they're always going to be doing something and faffing around and, you know, spending forever setting up their little house in the park, you know, for their day camping, they call it. And they spend all the time faffing around setting it up, and then we're going to set up the barbecue and faff around doing that, and then we're going to cook the food, and then we're going to eat the food, and then we're going to put it away. And you'll very rarely see anybody just lying around reading a book or lying around having a rest or anything. You know, there's this thing about being seen to be busy all the time, and yet we know from family members and friends, Japanese family members and friends, that they will often hide on the weekend in their house all day and not do anything. So that they are getting rest. So sort of the point is that a lot of this is just illusion and BS, really. This whole I'm so tired all the time, and life's hard and I'm tired, and it's all. Another video we made once about hardship and suffering, about how hardship and suffering sort of embraced in Japan. That having a hard life and suffering all the time is he always gambarus, he always tries his best, and there it is again, it's that perpetuating thing, and it's all sort of a part of that. But really, it's pretty much nonsense. It's the same as that work yourself to death thing. Well, yeah, out of 127 million people, there's probably some that really did work themselves to the point of dying, but a lot of that's just nonsense, really. Everyone's pretending to be working a lot and pretending to working hard. And again, we're not basing this on just the one person we know or one story we heard once. This is stuff that we see and hear all the time. All the time. People that we know really well, family and friends and neighbours and people, we know how much time they spend at home and how much time they spend at work and how much free time they have. We know, and yet they're always telling you how tired they are, and you think, well, hang on, wait a minute, it's Sunday night, you spent the whole day at home, lying on the sofa, and you're telling us that you're tired. And it's just an automatic thing, Aussies are the opposite. Australian people, those Aussies watching will recognise this, or any of you who know an Australian, Aussies are the opposite. If you ask an Aussie, what'd you do on the weekend? Nothing, mate. Nothing. I spent all Sunday at home watching cricket and never got up off the sofa all weekend. And the other Aussies that he told that would be saying, oh, good on you, mate, well done. Because we sort of encourage people to take it easy, and take it easy, mate, take it easy. We say it, that's what we say, and we see relaxing and having a good time and not stressing and so on to be a healthy thing. And I think a lot of you guys do too, from other cultures, don't you? that recognise that it's healthy to have free time, and it's healthy to get enough sleep, and it's healthy not to work too much, and balance. I mean, a lot of you guys watching this would, in your countries, if you did work too hard at work, there's a good chance that your boss would say to you, hey, listen, you need to take it a bit easy, you're going to burn yourself out, why don't you go home early today? Not uncommon, is it? Outside Japan. So it really is a bit of nonsense, and they're going to have to get on top of it, because with the aging population, what's happening is there's a lot of people getting older who'll stop work, and there won't be so many young people still working. And so what it means is the people who are working are going to need to be more productive. They need to be more productive in their work, because this just spending more time at work, spending more time at school, and spending more time at work, is not the solution, is it? It's not getting any more done. So they're going to need to work on the productivity thing. And look, if you're tired, I actually said to someone the other day, a young guy said to me, oh, I'm tired. And I said, how are you? He said, I'm tired. And I said, well, you need to get more sleep then. To be complaining about how tired you are every day when you're 17 years old is ridiculous, isn't it? And it is ridiculous. There's nobody here, there's very few people here who couldn't be getting 7 hours sleep a day if they wanted to. If they cut out some of their faffing that they do, if a time management, never heard of anybody doing time management here, never heard of it, but if a time management expert walked around with a Japanese person and wrote down everything that the person did in a day, they'd be able to say, look, you can cut 2 hours off this and an hour off this, and there you go, now you can sleep 7 hours a night or 8 hours a night if you want to, And then we know people who do, that's the other thing, we know people here who sleep 9 hours a night, but they never tell anybody, because everyone here says that they sleep 5 hours a night. If you ask Japanese people, pretty well across the board, teenagers or adults, they'll tell you they sleep 5 hours a day, right? And some of them it's true, but often it's not. We know people who sleep 9 hours. We know university students will sleep until midday, and their parents complain that they've got to go wake them up for lunch because they're still asleep. And yet you ask them how they are, oh, I'm tired. So it's a bit of a thing. So sort of don't necessarily believe it. When you hear all this about Japanese people working themselves to death, yeah, there are examples of that, but there's a lot more examples of people just, filling up their day, renting a car for an hour to go and hide. Renting a car for an hour. How many of those people go back to the office and tell the people they work with that they rented a car for an hour to have a sleep, do you think? How many of them go back and tell the people in the office they did that, or their partner? You can be sure they won't. They'll just, oh, I'm tired. I'm tired. So it's a bit of a thing. Those of you who live in Japan will be sitting here listening to this going, yeah, I know, I hear this every day. You do. And if you come spend time in Japan, you will. You'll hear it every day, and you'll see those things described about the people sitting in their cars and watching TV and smoking cigarettes and just hiding, basically. And they won't go home and tell their family they were doing that. They'll go home and let their family think that they worked until 9 o'clock at night. Oh, he left at 6 in the morning, he came home at 9 o'clock at night. They won't say they won't tell them they spent 2 hours in the convenience store car park, avoiding going home and spending time with their family. There's a whole video there, isn't it, that topic? Anyway, there it was. I'm tired. More videos coming soon.